Since 1975, the Long Beach Grand Prix has produced a high-octane blend of glitz, glamour, and horsepower. And for the first time since 2023, Porsche Carrera Cup North America is part of that unique formula. Race 1 yesterday saw series returnee Tom Sargent score a dominant victory overall, while Patrick Mulcahy and Marco Cironi stayed perfect on the season in class. But today we reshuffle the deck for an encore run in Race 2 of the Grand Prix of Long Beach, presented by Solaris Aviation. Hello, my name's Ryan Marine. Arjuna Kankavati is alongside on a glorious day in Southern California. And what a venue. As mentioned, since the mid-70s, this has been the home of motorsport on the West Coast. Arjuna, let's talk about this Long Beach street circuit.
With danger, especially barreling down in towards the fountain for the very first time. But then you think about passing opportunities, turn 1, turn 9, and maybe not turn 11, but it's all about setting up the run out of there to blast your way back down East Shoreline Drive on that run down to turn 1 once again, where we did see a couple of moments yesterday, both with side-by-side battling, but also single car running down into the runoff on the outside of turn 1.
Racing in Long Beach was dreamed up by former travel agent Chris Spook. It was inspired, of course, by the Monaco Grand Prix. For many years, this event was shepherded by the late and much-missed Jim McHaley, and all of the cars on the grid here this weekend in Porsche Carrera Cup have a commemorative sticker. We're racing in the memory of you, Jim. Godspeed, racer. Hope you're enjoying the weekend. Well, here we go. 40 minutes on the clock, and the cars are starting to roll out on the formation lap. What a return to the championship yesterday, Arjuna, for Tom Sargent. He's won before in this championship. He's come close to a title as well, but gets called back into GT3 Cup duty, climbing aboard these cars, and man, he was dominant, wasn't he, from pole position yesterday?
It took him a practice session or two, but once he dialed himself back in, it was really hard to match him. Aaron Johnson got close towards the end of the race, and that's going to be something that will try and now flip around. I was talking to him overnight, and he said a couple of setup changes, a couple of things in his driving, and he's going to try and fire off straight behind Tom Sargent on that starting formation, down to turn number 1. Be a bit more aggressive, and don't let the driver run away and steal valuable championship points in Johnson's fight against Tyler Maxson after 2 race wins at Sebring.
Yeah, we're already thinking about the points, because you never know with this series and which race you might lament when it comes down to the wire late in the going. It was of note that a one-off driver won the race yesterday. Speaking of which, let's look back on how the first race of the weekend here at Long Beach played out. It was Sargent starting on pole position for GMG, the e-boost machine, on the race crew pole position, and controlled the race early in the going. There we go. Let's look back at that race now, and getaway it was for Sargent, the Antipodean, who's been busy racing GT3 Porsches around the globe. Some drama in the early going, though, as Nikita Lastishkin went long. Had to get that car turned around, but we stayed green. Managed to stay green with this incident, too. Chris Palomo spinning off the nose of Rob Walker. Walker was penalized for that, but did qualify on the race crew pole positioning class for race 2 here today. Both cars able to continue on, but much delayed. They were fighting for 3rd in class at the time. Really good fight here. This was toward just inside the top 5. Tyler Maxson trying to make up some ground in the middle of the race, but at the front, no one could keep pace with Tom Sargent. He got the win overall, while Mulcahy and Cironi stayed perfect in the Solaris Aviation Masters and Pro-Am classes. So that was yesterday. Here we go with race number 2 of the weekend on this glorious Sunday in Long Beach. The green flag waves overhead and the 40-minute clock starts ticking down. Another good getaway from Sargent from pole position. Callum Hedge giving chase, but under threat immediately from Aaron Johnson once again. Look at the speed built up quickly in the run down to turn number 1. It's clean and clear for Sargent at the front, but side by side for second, third, and fourth. It looked like Jean-Son for the second day in a row was able to grab that spot, Arjuna.
And Tyler Maxson tried to follow through and now has to get the elbows out as they funnel out through the double right-handers. Look like Jared Thomas pulled alongside in that white and red highlighted Cup car on the front. Very defensive start there from Callum Hedge, who lost out to Jean-Son and then almost lost out to Tyler Maxson as well, as all of our pro cars at the front still try and shuffle around for track position, knowing that if they let Tom Sargent break away, they may not see him again.
Top 7 cars on the starting grid were from the Mobile Pro class. 2 other classes, as mentioned, Solaris Aviation Pro-Am and Solaris Aviation Masters classes. It's Sargent leading the way, Jean-Son giving chase. It's Hedge fighting there for the 3rd spot. Further back, side-by-side action in some of the subclasses as they make their way rounding turn 9 here for the first time at speed.
This is where you've got to be wise in these opening stages. Give a little bit of room. There is plenty of bumping going on as we straighten up and put the power down and close the first lap. And Patrick Mulcahy, great effort in qualifying. He's got plenty of separation to the rest of his Pro-Am competitors, and that could come in handy, knowing that one small mistake here, there's not much runoff, but if you do need to go deep into it, as we saw yesterday at turn 1 on a couple of occasions, can afford to give yourself a little bit more breathing room that Tyler Maxson doesn't have right now.
No, he doesn't. He's got company in the form of Jared Thomas, who is shy about using the bumper of this Porsche 911 Cup car. Closing in, that's the battle there. Car 77 is Maxson. He is 4th. Thomas is 5th. Thomas was runner-up to Maxson in the season opening race back at Sebring 1 month ago, so these two have battled before, but this is much further down the order than either of these drivers envisioned that they would be fighting for positions, Arjuna.
Yeah, and it all started right in free practice and building up to qualifying, not getting the car exactly where they wanted it to be. Tyler Maxson said he threw the kitchen sink at it overnight heading into that first race of the weekend. It went decently for him. Up at turn 9, Patrick Mulcahy put under pressure by JCD Dubets in the number 7 Paddock Equity. Kelly Moss GT3 car, Cup car this weekend. Very good job from Mulcahy to hold his line and to run that momentum back onto the start-finish straight and back down to turn 1.
Patrick perfect on the season. Pole, fastest lap in race wins in all 3 races. He was on pole once again in class to get this race started and runs right now in the middle of the Mobile Pro Class competitors, having another really good run. And as we talked about yesterday, this is a home race for him. He's from about 14 miles away from where this race is held. He's the cork in the bottle right now, though. It's the white and yellow and blue car, 54. Pressure from behind, that is JCD. John Capestro Dubets with the new team this weekend starting to close in.
And the lights flash as one of the other Mobile Pro cars is starting to get a bit frustrated. It's teammate to Tyler Maxson, Cole Kleck. We did see that maybe towards the middle and latter parts of yesterday's race, Cole maybe started to struggle a little bit more. Some more fighting is onto the backstretch run on East Seaside Way. Very poor exit out of turn 8, and it's really cost Patrick Mulcahy. Cole Kleck now left on the outside to fight with JCD Dubets.
Yeah, JCD able to slide on through. Now, looks like Mulcahy trying to fight back to the outside in this long duration 180-degree corner, which immediately leads to the braking zone for the hairpin. Tightest, slowest corner on the calendar. And it leads to the longest full throttle section. Can't really call it a straightaway here at Long Beach, can you, Arjuna? This long curving pit section that leads to the great passing opportunity in turn 1.
And even into turn 1, you notice how the drivers all shuffle off to the right-hand side of the track, but that red line denotes the track limit. The other side is the pit exit for series that do need pit stops, but that is not allowed. It funnels the drivers into turn 1 at a much narrower angle, and it makes it a much more difficult passing spot, which is what we kind of saw when we were looking at those highlights back from race 1 yesterday, when Chris Belomo got together with Rob Walker. Just an unfortunate moment, trying to get alongside, not quite there, and Belomo came the worse off after the contact.
That's true. However, it's a new day today, and Rob Walker now has the leader in Pro-Am, Mulcahy, right out in front here. This is the battle for 14th and 15th and 16th overall, and you can extend that further down. It looks like a train of about 7 or 8 cars running in a line here. Mulcahy, though, leads the train, now has about a car length ahead of Walker. Behind Walker, though, he needs to get a move on because here comes Scott Blend, here comes Marco Cironi, two of the front runners in this championship and the two drivers who finished 1-2 a day ago.
Scott Blend, who didn't have the easiest of starts to his season at Sebring, but seemingly bouncing back after such a successful 2025 with 4 different Porsche championships across the different ladders. Building up the entire pyramid is what Porsche wants to do. It's in the various sprint challenges where you can run Cayman GT4 cars, maybe step then into some of the older generation cup machinery that still competes in many a series, both in sprint and endurance forms. And then you work your way up here into the Porsche Carrera Cup North America. Scott Blend, second yesterday, was very close to Marco Cironi, and fundamentally right now is sitting in a very good spot once again, second, but Cironi right behind him. Not perfect necessarily with 4 race wins in a row, but you can't complain with 4 podiums in a row if you are Cironi.
Well, and that's still to be determined, right? He's got the target acquired right out the windscreen. He has Blend, and you can't miss that car. Both of them, actually, Cironi and Blend, bright yellow and purple, almost highlighter yellow and the purple there. And they found each other on the track once more, as they did yesterday. Blend was really the only one able to keep Marco honest yesterday.
That was partly because of the fighting that we saw a little bit further back, but even at the start of the race, there was no question those top 2 were slowly starting to stretch their legs. It does feel like it's a slightly warmer day, Ryan. I'm unfortunately on the other coast, but I'm hoping you, being on site, you can confirm my suspicions that the conditions these drivers are dealing with are very different to what we had yesterday in race 1.
Certainly so. It's warmer, for one thing, later in the day, 72 degrees in the air, but more importantly, the track temperature is up 120 degrees, and there's been a lot of different rubber from the various championships running here this weekend laid down, in addition to the Pirelli rubber we see in Porsche Carrera Cup North America. And the WeatherTech Championship race had IndyCar qualifying and IndyCar warm-up session earlier today. Robbie Gordon's jumpy trucks are here this weekend, plus there was a drifting exhibition through the hairpin using part of the racetrack just last night. So the track conditions can change dramatically on a street course. That's normal, but when it's used as much and by so many different championships and series as we see here at Long Beach, it just adds another wrinkle for these teams to try and stay on top of.
And with only 5 of our drivers having competed previously in Porsche Carrera Cup North America action on the streets of Long Beach going back to 2022 and 2023, it means they kind of are venturing into the unknown every time. They don't have a sense for how the track might evolve, and therefore can kind of make educated guesses. And so, again, goes back to the team behind the scenes as well. These drivers are ensconced in the cockpit seemingly by themselves, but there's an entire operation behind the scenes that's helped them to get here and is helping them to maximize their performance. And that includes, by the way, some of the resources at Porsche Motorsport North America, just about 11 miles down the road, especially for some of our Porsche junior drivers who are all hoping, I mentioned the pyramid of Porsche Sprint Challenge and Carrera Cup ranks, but some of these drivers are hoping to climb the ranks of becoming a Porsche factory driver one day and maybe following in the footsteps of a Laurin Heinrich.
Exactly, who came from basically an equivalent to Sprint Challenge and now all the way to being a factory driver, and had a great run in the WeatherTech Championship race yesterday in the GTP class. Let's highlight a few drivers to watch. We've talked up Patrick Mulcahy. He's the championship leader in the Solaris Aviation Pro-Am class. Won both races in Sebring. He won yesterday as well. He's had the pole and the fastest lap in all 3 races, and he's leading once again in class here. Plus, this is a home race, a track he knows reasonably well. He might not have been here before in Carrera Cup, but he did run an SRO race here 1 year ago, so has a little bit of track knowledge, admittedly, though, in a different car. Speaking of cars to highlight in the Solaris Aviation Masters class, it's been the season of Marco Cironi, the veteran of this style of racing, a decade plus driving single-make Porsche cars, longtime partner Mark Motors on that car once again, finds himself down in third. He's won all 3 races in class so far this season, Arjuna, but he's got some work to do if he's going to make it a perfect 4 for 4.
I go back to, 4 podiums is not a bad start to a championship run either, when we know that consistency is what will bring you to the forefront of a championship fight. From here, we go back to another street circuit, although, some will argue that the Miami International Circuit doesn't pose the same challenge, with the walls being as prevalent maybe as they are here around the Long Beach Grand Prix circuit. That's another round of the championship that no one will really have an opportunity to test for. The rest of the season is when we'll see some of these drivers head into a weekend already having built a baseline, and especially when you go back to the Solaris Aviation Pro-Am and Masters classes, that confidence, Ryan, is so important, because we know Patrick Mulcahy can get it done over 1 lap, but the more confidence he has, the more consistent he'll be over the 40 minutes of racing action.
Totally agree with that. Checking back in on the Mobile Pro class in the battle that's breaking out here with Tyler Maxson, who's chasing down Callum Hedge. But Maxson, what a debut to the season, at least, for the driver who contended down to the final bit of the year last year for Rookie of the Year honors. Pole and fastest lap at both races at Sebring, but it's not gone quite the same way for Tyler here at Long Beach. Struggled a bit in qualifying, made up ground yesterday, up a couple of spots to finish in 4th. Right now finds himself 4th once again, and reprising his duel with Hedge that went down to the wire in dramatic fashion, Arjuna.
And yesterday, Tyler thought that he had a lot. I think a sentiment that Callum agreed with. However, just the placement of the car, they did make contact at turn 9 at the end of Seaside Way once as well. That was something that I'm sure was taken a look at by the teams to see if they felt there was anything untoward. But we had mentioned it earlier, Tyler Maxson had thrown the kitchen sink at the setup, gone back to something a lot more akin to what they had developed for Sebring, because what they had in practice was just not quite working out. And he was a lot more comfortable with the car yesterday, and as the race went on, he got stronger and stronger. Callum Hedge seemingly got weaker and weaker, and so if that same trend is to apply today, if the teams haven't been able to necessarily correct the trend that we saw yesterday, expect the same. Hedge to continue to struggle and Maxson to get increasingly physical as we head into the closing stages, but this time Jared Thomas is a lot closer to both of them.
That is a variable that was not in play a day ago. Really good point. By the way, Hedge and Maxson must have found one another on the opening lap, because there was a message from race control. They had an incident under review. No action, though, was taken, so able to continue on and continue this duel that has lasted now across 2 days of racing, the better part of an hour. Maxson close, but Thomas also, as you point out, closing in. A little further down, had a change of position, 10th and 11th changing hands with Paul Bocuse on the last lap, getting around Sabra Cook, who got her best ever Long Beach result yesterday, finishing inside the top 10, just outside of that right now. All of this that we're watching, though, happening about 5 seconds in arrears of the race leader, Tom Sargent, who yesterday, you'll recall, Arjuna, led by 3.5 to 4 seconds at about this stage of the race before Jean-Son made a rally late in the going. Jean-Son has been able to keep it closer this time around, only 2.5 seconds separating the top 2. Maybe that car is a bit better set up for the long run, and he can have something to play with against Sargent late in this race today.
But Aaron has said that he's made a couple of changes to try and improve that short run, the initial fire-off down to turn 1. I think the issue really was he kind of was caught out on the race start, and he had to go physical on Callum Hedge because Tom Sargent had pulled such a gap into the braking zone of turn 1. And so 2.5 seconds, 25 minutes to go. It's not the biggest gap, but we always say it's one thing to catch, it's another thing to pass, especially at a track like this where you can't force a passing opportunity. You kind of want to analyze where the other driver is strong, weak, where they're making mistakes, and where you can capitalize on them to try and set up some of those opportunities, maybe put some pressure on and force a mistake. It's more surreal type of racing than maybe what we saw at the front last time with Jared Thomas and Tyler Maxton in our opening race of the campaign.
Johnson is inching closer. He just did the K1 speed fastest lap of the race the last time by, which has allowed him to get down to just 2.3 seconds shy of Tom Sargent. That's K1 speed fastest lap of the race. It's a partnership between the nationwide indoor karting operation K1 Speed and Porsche that was announced at the tail end of the year last year, with K1 Speed karting centers awarding drivers, one from the teen and one from adult classes, free entry fees into Porsche Sprint Challenge, which provides an entry point into that Porsche pyramid that we've been talking about, Arjuna. And in conjunction with that partnership, on Wednesday of this week, some of the Porsche Junior Program drivers, Janusz Stiak and Paul Bocuse, went to the nearby K1 Speed facility in Torrance, and they put down some benchmark laps for the drivers there to chase after.
Oh, amazing. That's so cool to see, and it just is another pathway that Porsche has continued to develop. We had talked about it briefly yesterday, but Mitchell de Jong, who has already wrapped up the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup North America Championship, brand new for 2026. They've got their final round of the season coming up next Wednesday. You can catch that live, I believe it's about 8 p.m. Eastern on Porsche Motorsports North America channels. But that's another way that a lot of young talent find their footing in the sport, and Porsche in particular have recognized that. And the junior shootout, where Porsche picks the next driver that they think has headed the way of factory status, and they will support and work with them even more. Well, the first step of that shootout last winter was actually to go to the Porsche Esports facility and to work with their factory esports drivers and see the pace and see their evolution. And so Porsche have been such a ardent supporter of esports as a pathway, to the point where this weekend, one of their Porsche factory drivers, former teammate of Mitchell de Jong, has just been racing in the Porsche Sprint Challenge Great Britain. So just another pathway that Porsche's looking for the next cream of the crop.
It's amazing to think about. You know, we tell the story of a Lauren Heinrich or a Matt Campbell that have come up through the Porsche pyramid to race at the World Championship level. Could it be in 10, 15 years' time someone from the esports side of the world, or maybe one of the talented drivers identified through this partnership with K1 Speed, could rise through the Porsche pyramid to the very upper echelons of motorsports? It's not one clear path to get to being a professional racing driver anymore. There's a bunch of different viable pathways, and Porsche has identified several of them and deserves commendation for the way that they've supported that partnership and that pipeline over the years. Back to the task at hand, though, which is the fight here for 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the Mobile Pro class. Sargent and Johnson lead 1st and 2nd, but 2 seconds behind Johnson is Hedge, leading car in this trio, then Maxton and Thomas, who's been able to keep them honest here today.
It's been a relatively clean weekend. Our race control team hasn't had too much to look at. They are investigating a incident between Connor Bloom and Janusz Stiak that might have been related to the swap for 6th position a little bit further down in the Mobile Pro class. As we unwind the steering, close lap 13, the lead is still hovering around that 2-second buffer, but for the first time in a while, it's under 2 seconds as Aaron Johnson goes on the charge. Jared Thomas in the hunt for the final step on the podium. He's now taken that K1 Speed fastest lap of the race away from the contenders in front of him, so he's seemingly finding more speed, but maybe also more confidence in his own driving late in the weekend.
Well, this also plays into the storyline we talked about back in Sebring, where, yes, it's a new car this year, but also the new partnership with Pirelli. And one thing we noticed in Sebring was frequently the fastest laps were coming in the second half, even the final quarter of the races. And here we are halfway through this sprint, and you rightly point out that Thomas just took that K1 Speed fastest lap of the race. Just saw Johnson pump in his best first sector on this lap. And I'll tell you what, it's not just my eyes telling me this. The stopwatch would agree. Johnson, Arjuna, is catching Sargent.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. verging on half distance and half time in this second race of the weekend, and that Racing for Children's Kelly Moss 24, the white and green stripes, such a famed livery in this series, and a livery with so much success for Kelly Moss as well, including in Porsche Sprint Challenge, where they've got a young up-and-coming driver, Carol Stout, who continues to find success in that as well. Hunting down Tom Sargent, although, to be fair, those are two liveries you won't miss running around the streets of Long Beach.
There's a lot of distinctive liveries in the championship this year, which is fantastic. Certainly helps us to identify the cars at first blush. This continues to be just a fantastic scrap. To my eye, Callum Hedge's car might have settled down a little bit, as squirrely as it looked 5 minutes or so ago, and that allowed Maxon to get closer. It seems a little more neat and tidy, Arjuna. That said, Maxon's car still looks pretty stout as well. Right there in the tire trap. He's close. Is he close enough to make a lunge?
Getting deja vu. It was right around this point in yesterday's race that Maxon began to look stronger. Callum Hedge began to look a little bit weaker. They are starting as well to drop off the back of Tom Sargent, so we'll keep an eye on the leading gap to give us a sense of if Callum Hedge is now driving in the mirrors, if he's thinking more defensively. If he's admitted that he didn't have speed compared to Tyler Maxon yesterday, that tells us a lot. It tells us he's thinking defensively already as they plant their foot back down to the throttle. Look how close to the wall they get. Barely a paper could be fit between the mirror and the wall as they work back towards the start-finish line. Aaron Johnson's found a little bit more time. He's got the fastest lap once again, the K1 fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, he set that 2 laps ago. This lap, he wasn't far off of that and was 0.2 of a second quicker than the race leader. So projecting 10 minutes or so down the line at this pace, we'll have a battle for the lead. But, of course, Sargent could be monitoring that gap and keeping something in reserve. Nevertheless, we'll monitor it while keeping our eyes affixed on this fight for the final step of the podium. Callum Hedge, the Kiwi who came stateside to be a single-seater driver. He told me that never really was his career goal, but he had some backers that said, yeah, we'd like you to go to the U.S., race in Formula Regional Americas, race in Indy next. So he said, sure, why not? Having already accomplished quite a bit, including a championship in Porsche single-bank racing down under. But he did say this is a bit like coming home, coming out of the open-wheel car, back into the 10-top, and he absolutely loves this opportunity to go racing in Porsche Carrera Cup North America.
And you know, he would have had some opportunities, I'm sure, to step up into Porsche Carrera Cup Asia, one of the other championships, which is running this new 992.2 Cup car for 2026, alongside of the Porsche Carrera Cup Deutschland, and of course the Porsche Mobile One Super Cup, which is kind of the very top of the pyramid when you look at it from the one-make side of things. Meanwhile, Pro-Am and Masters starting to trip over each other slightly. Patrick Mulcahy's continued to run at the front of the train, but I get the sense that Rob Walker would like to pull the pin sooner rather than later, because Scott Blind is getting closer and closer, and indeed, as they run back down to turn number 1, might be a swap for track position.
Now, this could have some consequences here. If Walker were able to get by, that would put an out-of-class car between himself and his closest pursuer, and he has done just that. It's an out-of-class battle breaking out further behind. That's Chironi losing an overall spot to Pratt. So now we have 5 cars with 2 different classes and no one in the same class running nose to tail. This is when the calculus, the risk versus reward calculus, gets very interesting. How much are you willing to risk in passing a car from a different class that doesn't affect your championship points in the case of the Pro-Am and Masters cars, if it just means trying to either get a buffer or erase a buffer for your opposition?
Well, all the Masters podium sitters now have contenders between each other, so it becomes a bit more difficult to actually fight, and it goes back to, like you say, it being a really important moment for Walker, who's already built up a couple of car lengths gap at the end of East Seaside Way as we break into that final sector out through the right-hander at turn 9 and the increasingly tight turn 10, but of course no real match for the really tight radius that is turn 11, which I don't think in these cars you're necessarily taking one hand off the wheel to make the corner, but there are certainly some cars this weekend where it's a bit tricky to navigate your way through.
Well, this is huge, as mentioned, for Walker in the Herbie the Love Bug inspired livery, leading in the Masters class. Oh, side-by-side action further behind, and that gets sorted out in the run down to the fountain. I think that was Pratt making his way around Blind. Yes, it was. That now puts Blind in the crosshairs of Gironi. That is for position. So yellow and purple, the primarily yellow car is Blind. Gironi in the primarily purple car just behind. And this is meaningful here as Gironi pops the nose out of line, but elects to settle back in line. Oh, and Pratt goes long in the braking zone.
Wonder what that was. This, remember, is between the defending champion and the points leader, and all signs point to these two being the contenders when we roll our way towards the end of the season. These could be valuable championship points that they're duking it out for. It's about 20 difference between second and third in your class in the IMSA scoring methods traditionally, but of course Porsche Carrera Cup North America, a slightly different points format to that, and so it's just 3 points difference between second and third spot. Could those be 3 very valuable championship points?
Certainly could come the end of the season. By the way, it might not just have been about Pratt missing a braking zone, because race control has reported that he has pulled that car behind a barrier, found a safe spot to park the car, so we remain under green flag conditions for the moment, but disappointment certainly for Pratt. Back to Walker, though, who now has extended his lead over Blind in Masters to 3.3 seconds. Unless I'm very much mistaken, I don't believe he's won a race in Carrera Cup North America before. He had 2 podium finishes, including a runner-up at Sebring. In a partial season last year, had 4 podium results and had a solid 4th place in the championship standings, but finds himself out in front at effectively his home race. He's from San Diego, not too terribly far down the road.
And I don't think that Rob has done many of the street circuits. That's why you talk about the partial campaign in his first season. And so this is one of the things that maybe he's gaining more and more confidence with, to use that word once again. These are cars where you need that confidence to understand where the balance is. And that's what Tom Sargent was saying as well, how to not overdrive the car while still being as aggressive as possible. Another look at what happened to Alex Pratt, who just goes straight at the end of West Shoreline Drive. Not much that I can tell from the replay, Ryan, as to exactly what is wrong with the car.
No, it remains a mystery to me as well, I confess. But we did see that car moving slowly, so he has moved away from the cutout he had found previously, and actually now can say from outside my window he's made his way into the pit lane. So there does seem to be something amiss with that car, which is a real shame for Alex Pratt, with 11 minutes and 50 seconds left in the session, and he certainly will take no more meaningful part in the race at this stage. And there is the car coming to the attention of the ACI team. See if we can divine what might be going wrong with it. Quickly checking the left front, but I'm not sure, and there's not a whole lot of urgency, is there, Arjuna?
No, not at all. Now it's the left rear that they're taking a quick look at. Quite uncertain as to where the issue is just from that body language. So we'll see if there is more information to come as Rob Walker continues to build his advantage in that Masters class. Aaron Johnson is now down to just 1.3 seconds away from Tom Sargent. And to go back to something I mentioned about 10-15 minutes ago, Callum Hedge has not dropped off in this race like he did in yesterday's race. So a very good sign for him. But is it also a sign that Tom Sargent's pace has just been a lot more consistent through the 30-odd minutes that we've had so far?
Interesting looking at the times the last few times around. Sargent and Johnson, they've been trading tenths of a second back and forth one way or the other. The last lap, Sargent was a little quicker. This lap so far, Johnson's been a little bit quicker, and the lead has more or less stabilized right around 1.3 seconds on this time by. Johnson just marginally faster. Behind them, though, this fight rages on. Blend and Gironi, this is for second and third in the Masters class. Blend on the defensive, down the hill to the inside. Gironi trying to set him up for the crossover move. Should get a decent run out of the corner. Sits in the slipstream, Arjuna. Pops out of line to make the pass.
But this is where the car on the inside has the opportunity just to slowly open the steering and run the other car out of road. That's exactly what's happened here. Marco not willing to leave himself on the outside, and what's it's really done is compress the grouping slightly, so not just two cars now fighting, but make it four as they unwind off the hairpin. Not all the cars in the same class. Rico Schleemun is tucked behind them in one of the Mobile Pro entries for ACI Motorsports, and then behind them is Chris Bellomo, also in that Masters class, back down to turn number one.
Yeah, Bellomo would love to get up into this fight and try and scrap for a podium spot in the final 9 minutes and 19 seconds. Through the fountain section, once again, one of the iconic viewpoints in North American racing. You see a picture of that fountain, you know immediately that you're in Long Beach. Blend with a little wiggle in the brake zone, puts the power down nicely. It's got Gironi giving chase. Again, Gironi showing that purple nose, but unwilling to take the lunge to the inside.
Still 9 minutes for him to figure out where he thinks the best opportunity is, because go back to yesterday's race, that little bit of contact at turn one between Walker and Bellomo. A half-hearted move when you're not fully alongside. It doesn't always end well here, and Marco's such a veteran. I think the last thing that he's going to do is put his nose in a place where it doesn't belong.
That's a really good point about the half-hearted move. Harkening back to yesterday and the penalty that Rob Walker drew, it looked like he just wasn't quite sure if he could get alongside and make that pass stick, and it ended up in tears both for himself and for Chris Bellomo, who ended up on the wrong end of the contact. Walker was given the penalty, having a much better day today, though, sitting pretty, 4.3 seconds ahead of the battle for second and third. Blend for Ruckus Racing, run Archangel Motorsports, and longtime entrant, mechanic, and driver Mike Johnson oversees that highly successful operation that a year ago set all kinds of records, Arjuna, winning 4 different championships between Carrera Cup North America, Sprint Challenge North America, USA West, and Endurance Challenge. And it was a special, special night for Scott Blend at the Porsche Night of Champions, where he was presented with a first-of-its-kind award, a diamond ring commemorating Forever First with those 4 championships a year ago.
It was so remarkable that the logistics of doing that, it's hard to wrap your head around, because obviously you're shipping your race car to so many of the events, but when those logistics don't quite work out, he's renting cars from some of his other teams, and you know they're providing such great support. So it also goes to show, especially at the Porsche Sprint Challenge level, the support that the teams give to one another. Yes, they're there to compete with one another and to win the race, but the camaraderie as well. It's hard to really explain what this Porsche family is like behind the scenes. As soon as this race is done, they are going to, well, first go through their respective post-race processes, but then head straight to the Porsche PenFed Drivers Lounge, where I'm sure any arguments will be settled pretty quickly.
Yes, and in a pleasant manner. They're well taken care of in that Drivers Lounge, that's for sure. Blend from St. Louis, Missouri. Gironi from Canada. They find themselves here in Long Beach, California, one of the iconic venues in North American racing. From here, the series makes the trip all the way across the country, just about as far as you can go, down to Miami, the Miami International Autodrome, for a pair of races in conjunction with the Formula One Grand Prix. Great to have that partnership continuing for yet another year. That will be the 1st and 2nd of May. Those 2 races at the Miami International Autodrome, presented by PenFed Credit Union. Much different challenge, I guess, ostensibly a street circuit. You could kind of call it temporary, although they do use it quite a bit for testing and for private events, things like that. But a far cry from a true temporary street course like this one, right?
No comparison. And even the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, which, you know, some of the drivers may have raced at before, it's quasi-street circuit again. It doesn't necessarily have that same sort of charm as Long Beach. But again, it's not just, I think, that charm. It's also just the nature of the surface in many ways, right? Just the fact that it's so bumpy, so raw, brings you closer to the wall with peril. And so that's the mental stress that goes through the drivers during a race as long as this. But comparing it to yesterday as well, the air conditioning system in this brand new Porsche 992.2 Cup car probably coming in handy given the heat that we've seen, both out in the air, but also out on track, given some of the battles these drivers have been involved in.
Certainly so. That would raise the blood pressure, raise the internal temperature, if nothing else. Looks like these two are starting to run down Mulcahy a little bit, and that could cause some condensing of that fight and perhaps present an opportunity. Let's go back to the front of the field where it had stagnated at about 1.5, 1.6 seconds. The gap between Sargent for GMG, the e-boost machine you're looking at here, and Aaron Johnson for Kelly Moss in the Racing for Children's car. But now, Arjuna, with just 4 minutes to go, not many laps left, but still maybe a chance for Johnson, who's on the charge here late.
And I think a slight moment through turn 8, maybe a hesitation getting onto the power for our race leader. I think the gap will be under a second if Aaron Johnson can navigate through the hairpin well, put that power down. No traction control at the rear. You get some ABS at the front of the car to help you on these bumps into some of the trickier braking zones, and indeed it was just that briefest of hesitation that's cost Sargent 0.3 of a second with, I'm trying to do the math here, will it be 2 or 3 laps left to go?
I think we're looking at 3 at this pace, but we'll find out together. Sargent, a remarkable run of form that he is in. Let's go back a month. Middle of March, finished on the class podium with Wright Motorsports in a Porsche 911 GT3R at the famed Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. Then, a couple of weeks ago, across the pond he went to compete in the European Le Mans Series season opener, parked the car in Victory Lane for Proton competition. Then, a couple weeks ago, at Sonoma Raceway in California, just a couple of hours up the road from here in Long Beach, another race win for GMG and for Tom Sargent in the 3-hour debut, the new race format in SRO America for GT World Challenge America. So you think about that, 3 different championships, a podium in one of the biggest endurance races in the world, race wins in European Le Mans Series and GT World Challenge America. Now a race winner already once this weekend here in Carrera Cup in Long Beach, and he's trying to make it a clean sweep.
Living up to that promise and potential that so many have seen, and saw him chosen as the official selected driver for Porsche Motorsport North America. His responsibility is to fly around the world representing Porsche Motorsport North America, be the quickest driver on a track that he can be, and that's exactly what he has done so far. And like we were saying yesterday, he is a bit of a benchmark for the rest of the field. Some of our drivers obviously hoping to go and be a part of the Porsche Junior Shootout maybe at the end of the year. Well, they've seen exactly what a race winner on so many different fronts can do, and Aaron Johnson's been the only one that's been able to put the pressure on as we dive into the final laps. I'll correct myself, by the way, Ryan. I meant will it be 3 or 4 laps? I wasn't quite sure. I think you're right. It will be 3, back from when we were last talking about it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, again, I think that's correct, but we're closing in on seeing the white flag here before too much longer. They're lapping at 1:20 pace, so this should be the white flag lap this time by Sargent, Johnson, separated by just a second. Then it's Hedge and Maxon. Here comes Maxon to the inside of Callum Hedge. Contact, right, left front, right rear, and somehow Hedge absorbs the contact and hangs onto the spot.
That wasn't a half-hearted move. That was made with all intent by Tyler Maxon, but not quite able to open the door. But there's the physicality, there's the aggression that maybe was missing yesterday to try and make the move. Not close enough down into turn number 1, but time winding down, and Tyler Maxon knows there's valuable championship points up for grabs.
He does indeed, and he knows his closest championship rival is having a pretty good day once again, with Johnson sitting in second. Sargent not running the full season, so he's not thinking about the championship. Johnson flashing those headlights. He'd love to maximize the points, but that said, finishing ahead of Maxon would help him inch closer in the title fight.
It's been a really interesting weekend, seeing everyone compare themselves against this benchmark of Tom Sargent. Aaron Johnson made those couple of changes to the car, to his driving, but it was just not enough. But at least a couple of second-place finishes heading off the streets of Long Beach.
Nothing to sniff at, a chance to stand on the podium and one of the most famous venues in North American motorsport. But atop the podium for the second straight day for GMG Racing, Tom Sargent sees the checkered flag at the Grand Prix of Long Beach. Tom Sargent sweeps the weekend in California. Johnson comes home second, less than a second behind. Hedge hangs on to the final step of the podium, fending off Tyler Maxon by half a second, Arjuna. Then Jared Thomas, Janusz Stiak, Connor Bloom, the top 7.
That's 4 races in a row which have been relatively trouble-free. A really good sign of the competition we have in this 2026 Porsche Carrera Cup North America. And talk of that competition, what a crucial move from Rob Walker to clear Patrick Mulcahy, build an advantage, and he's going to end this race 7 seconds down the road from the rest of the Masters class.
Race 1, a disappointment for Rob Walker, but he put that firmly in the rearview mirror. And on Sunday in Long Beach, Rob Walker and JTR will park it in victory lane in the Solaris Aviation Masters class. Meanwhile, in Pro-Am, Patrick Mulcahy stays perfect on the season. 4 wins in 4 races for the Californian. Fantastic race. Yes, Arjuna, it sure was. Mulcahy will be loving this. Lots of friends and family here. Walker as well, another Californian, gets the win. And then for Sargent, driving for a Californian team that for many years was based in LA, now primarily out at the Thermal Club. But what a big victory in the car. Vacated for the weekend, by the way, by Kyle Washington, who is here. He's doing a big sponsor activation with his company, eBoost, and told me, we want to make sure we're in the headlines, so we put our hot shoe in the car. I'd say it worked to perfection.
The headlines will be all about eBoost on top in both races of the weekend. And a chance for now all of our drivers to soak in the atmosphere, a unique atmosphere as well. They get to be part of Formula One paddocks, the IMSA paddock regularly. But everything I've heard about this Long Beach Grand Prix weekend is it's such a special time to be on the Golden Coast, and our drivers 2 successful races, now a chance to sit back and watch the rest of the racing action on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. It is a special place. You can't help but feel the history as you walk around the racetrack in Long Beach. Unofficial results from the second race of the weekend. Sargent, for the second straight day, atop the charts. Eric Johnson second once again, but does take home the K1 Speed fastest lap of the race. Second time he's done that here in the 2 races this weekend. Callum Hedge completes the podium ahead of Maxon and Jared Thomas, then Stiak, Bloom, JCD with a good charge today to get up to 8th. John Capestro Dubets, Cole Kleck in 9th, and Paul Bocuse a top 10 result. Page 2 of the standings. Sambra Cook for JDX finishes in 11th ahead of Alan Metney and Nikita Lastishkin. Rob Walker gets the victory and a well-earned one in race number 2. Congratulations to Rob and to Patrick Mulcahy, winners respectively of the Solaris Aviation Masters and Pro-Am classes. Some drivers that had a tough day today: Conley, Statlander, and Alex Pratt, who was very much in the middle of some of those fun fights inside or just around the top 10 overall. Had some kind of a technical issue that caused him first to go off track, then limp around to the pit lane and into the race there. Arjuna, final thoughts from a fun weekend here on the West Coast.
Another exciting display of why Porsche Carrera Cup racing around the world continues to develop the next crop of talent. And next time these drivers are racing, yes, it's a street circuit, but like we said, very different challenge when they head to the Miami International Circuit.
We'll look forward to that 1st and 2nd of May at the Miami International Autodrome. That event presented by PenFed Credit Union for races 5 and 6 of the season. Cars have made it back to Parc Fermé. The debrief's already underway, and very soon the celebrations will get started as well. This has been a fun weekend for us here in Long Beach. A great return for the first time since 2023. Hope you guys have enjoyed all the racing. For Arjuna and our entire team, I'm Ryan. So long from Long Beach.